Well, today we have the Reverend Bill Atkins. He has come up from Armagh direction, from the rectory in a little place called Killylea. I think there's another Killylea in County Down, which can be...
That's a GH.
A bit a GH, you're just LEA at the end. Okay. And we're continuing our podcast series, our channel, the Presbyterian. I also want just to say and to remind our viewers, Bill, that we're hoping that as people subscribe and follow the channel, any proceeds that would come in, once you get up to a certain amount of views and people subscribing, you get a slight income. So like to be giving that to cancer research, and I'm sure even some friends of the channel will be willing to and to put a bit extra on top of what we receive as well. So I hope people will subscribe and be followers of the Presbyterian, which is the name of our channel. Now, ironically, Bill, you're not a Presbyterian. No, but you're a minister, a rector in the Church of Ireland.
Yes.
But you have Presbyterian links on your mother's side.
That's right.
Irish Presbyterian as well. So your grandfather.
My grandfather was a missionary in Manchuria, and became moderator in 1961.
Moderator of the General Assembly.
I was always Presbyterian when I came over here on my holidays.
Okay.
Just like Her Majesty when she went to Scotland.
Okay.
But can I just point out that I'm not here today as the rector of Caledon. I am not speaking as a spokesperson for the Church of Ireland, and I never was.
Okay.
Certain people should need to understand that. I am entitled to speak and hold an opinion and express it without people saying, oh, he's speaking as the rector or he's speaking as a representative of the Church of Ireland. That is all irrelevant and nonsense.
Okay. Well, appreciate that. And one thing about our channel that we really trumpet loudly is liberty. It's what the early Presbyterians would stand for, is liberty, justice for all. And you make sure and know that you're free. And of course, it wasn't always easy, that track here in Ireland as they first arrived, and many would go to the New World to look for and to set up a republic which demonstrated liberty, justice and freedom for all in a far better way. But rather ironically, you saying that, I remember well, Bill, as you received through the data request thing that apparently Barry Reid sort of controls you, Bill. Apparently,
I can't think for myself.
You can't think for yourself.
I only do what you tell me to do.
That's right. You're my robot or puppet.
It's more that certain officials in my church were puppets of the hierarchy in the Presbyterian church.
Okay.
The Presbyterian church does have a hierarchy, it seems.
Well, basically, Bill, I'm going to be handing over to you, and just sort of, there's things we need a wee bit more elaboration on or something. I'll maybe step in and ask you if you can explain a wee bit more about what happened. And I don't take it lightly.
Well,
the things that happened to you were hurtful, and to your family as well. It was very far from gracious. It was very far from a Christian attitude that you were in the end of. But basically, this all started because you wrote a little email.
An email, yeah. But if you remember, my involvement began when I was just about to go to Pakistan, and you came round to my house quite distressed because you just had a visit from two people from the Presbytery. And if you remember, you actually got a bit annoyed with me because I was making light of it. You see, I didn't think that it was that serious, and I thought, well, if there's no truth in the allegation made against you, it'll come out in the wash. But little did I know at that stage that you were stitched up like a kipper from the beginning. They were out to get you, and it doesn't matter who made the phone call, they'd have found some other excuse to get at you. But anyway, after you went, I was so worried about you that I actually phoned your wife to make sure you got home on your motorbike safely. But anyway, it was I went off to Pakistan. While I was there, I got a phone call from my sister telling me about you appearing in the Ulster Gazette and the Tyrone Courier, or I forget the names of and the Belfast Telegraph. I saw those articles later. They were identical and with an identical photograph, so they appeared to be a press release. But what I also found disturbing is that friends of mine in the Orange Order had gone to Caledon Church for the 12th of July service and were surprised that you weren't there. And an announcement was made from the pulpit that you had resigned for personal reasons and that they were investigating allegations against you and that they were not to speculate as to the nature of these allegations. Now, that was before the 161 interrogations. I don't really know anything about those apart from what you have told me and others involved. But I understood that they found no evidence. And then I heard from one of the members at Caledon Presbyterian, that they'd all been invited to a public meeting where they could come and say what they like about you without any right of reply. And I thought that was a bit odd. And then you must have told me just after Christmas, but you'd been in America and you got this notice saying that you'd been struck off the roll of ministers without charge. No explanation or anything else. But anyway, I remember the date. It was February the 6th. February the 6th, I must have been talking to people at church or whatever. It was a Sunday evening, 2017. I just emailed the clerk of Presbytery, and all I said was, I'm dismayed to learn that Barry Reid has been dismissed from the role of ministers without charge on the basis of nothing more than an anonymous phone call, and that he's had no charges put to him, no evidence presented to him, and no right of reply. And I just said, I thought this seems to me contrary to any principle of natural justice. Press the send button, off it went, and I went to bed. But the next morning, my sisters were actually staying with me, and I was due to take them to the airport, but I turned on the computer, and there was a reply within 5 minutes of me having sent this thing. And it was inviting me, it said, you lay some serious charges at my doorstep, which I suppose is fair enough. They were fairly serious, denying somebody justice when they're supposed to be courts of the church, and every Presbyterian is supposed to be entitled to the protection of the courts of the church. So it's quite true. But I emailed him back and said, okay, let's meet. How about Tuesday? He emailed back saying, yeah, fine. And then just at that moment, I was just going to tie my shoelaces up and get ready to go out when one of my sisters shouted, there's someone to see you here. In fact, there were two people to see me. And they were totally overwrought and over the top. They're going on about how I was harming the good relations between the two churches. They said that as I was the rector of Caledon, anything I said would be taken as the position of the Church of Ireland. And they were just talking nonsense. They accused me of refusing a gracious meeting with officers of the Presbyterian Church. And I was trying to say, I haven't. I was trying to open my computer up again, but I was getting sort of flustered and not pressing the right buttons, but I wanted to show them on my email that I just replied. I hadn't refused a gracious meeting. I didn't know what a gracious meeting was anyway. I just agreed to meet with the. But anyway, they said they said to me, "No, you're upsetting the good relations, and we want you to have that meeting." So okay, I phoned the clerk there and then, and said, "Tuesday still all right?" He said, "Yeah, okay." I put the phone up. There, is it? I said, "He sounds a very nice chap." That's what I said to them. But just as I was put the phone down, they were then happy. They left, and I was thinking, that's very strange. What's he got to do with him? There's absolutely nothing to do with him. But anyway, when that they had gone, straight away the phone went. Clerk of Presbytery, can I come round now with the convener of the vacancy?
So the convener of the vacancy was the minister that was looking after my old charge,
Yeah.
Caledon and Winterburn. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I found out later that it should have been the moderator and the clerk who came to see me, and they should have seen me on their own without involving anybody from my church. It was nothing to do with anybody from my church.
Well, I would imagine that they should have had permission from the presbytery to have come and met with you.
Well, I've got no idea what was said, but
it all seems a bit
as
rash.
they were leaving, the archdeacons did say, oh, sorry, I said who they are now, but they did say to me that it was Tony Davidson who had made the phone call to involve them. Now, he is the one who came along with the clerk of Presbytery, and amongst the things they said was that I didn't really know what was going on, and that other people had complained about Barry Reid, and women were not comfortable in his presence because I said, what do you mean, does he flirt? I said, well, not exactly flirting. Tony Davidson said a lot of people are glad to see him go, and the clerk of Presbytery said that he had said that he had confided in another minister that he fancied this woman. To which I replied, "Oh, confided, did he? Oh, yeah. Well, what does that tell you about confiding in Presbyterian ministers or confiding in your colleagues?" But anyway, they basically were satisfied that I wasn't going to take it to Presbytery, and they left. But I was completely puzzled because not only had the archdeacons come storming around in like the Spanish Inquisition, but straight after there were Presbyterian ministers. So I phoned the archdeacon. He seemed reluctant to come to the phone. But I said, "Did you phone the Presbyterian ministers as soon as you had left?" He said, "No." And I just left it at that. Well, these subject access requests are very revealing because I have a document, an email, these were given to me by Clive Knox, the data protection officer, unredacted. See, the clerk had given me redacted ones, but this unredacted one made it quite clear.
So I'll just interrupt here, just to explain that Clive Knox was the data
protection officer for PCI.
up in the
in
palace, up in Belfast, up
Yeah.
in Church House.
Yeah.
So he had provided some.
He's provided me a lot of documents of communications between the clerk of Presbytery and Trevor Gribben.
So you were getting a little glimpse of what was going on behind
Yeah.
the scenes.
Yes, but anyway, this particular one said that that the archdeacons had been round. He had said that Tony Davidson had phoned the archdeacons, who were appalled at Bill Atkins's behaviour. That's what it says. They were appalled at Bill Atkins's behaviour. I can't believe it was as appalled as I am at theirs. But anyway, they came round, and what is said in this communication from the clerk to Gribben was a phone call quickly followed. Well, the clerk of Presbytery has no reason to lie to Gribben, so I assume that the archdeacon had lied to me, a bald-faced lie, because he said no, they didn't phone. But anyway, a phone call quickly followed, and Tony Davidson and I went round to see Bill Atkins to put him right about Barry Reid, who had clearly used him as he has used others. I mean, I'm just amazed that.
Now all of this simply because you
just because I sent an email,
and really it was an email just to express your sadness.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was just expressing what I thought about it. The clerk actually was very, he was free, did feel easy to speak to me, but others have obviously used him. I don't think he had anything against you particularly, but he wants to please his masters.
Yes.
That's my theory anyway. I mean, I just can't fathom why anybody should be so vindictive towards you.
Yes, I think as I reflect over time, and we hear more and more from people who've been on the receiving end.
Exactly, you're not the only one
of this type of treatment.
It's just like the post office. You're not the only one.
Asking a question is the first sort of point at which they'll feel really offended by.
Yeah.
Because they have come to see themselves as sort of a magisterium of the church, as it were. How can you question the elites that have God's seal of approval on who they are and what they do? So I can see how they would have been offended by that. Quite what they were doing, bursting into your home, arranging
it wasn't the Presbyterians who did that. It was
yes,
those who are over me in the Lord, as the Archbishop put it.
Yes, but the Presbyterians followed straight after. So there was definitely...
As a result of a phone call from the
As a result of a phone call, there was definitely correspondence. And that wasn't an accident, Bill.
It was Tony Davison that involved the archdeacons. They told me that.
Now, just to fill in for our listeners, Tony Davidson was also at that time acting as...
convener of the vacancy.
Well, no, but he was also the ecumenical dean.
He was
over in Armagh.
It's an ecumenical canon.
Ecumenical canon.
Yeah, that doesn't actually mean anything.
It's just. I must confess, a lot of the Anglican terms and positions, I don't really. A cannon, I'd wonder if he'd make a starting pistol. Never mind a cannon.
It's just a large bore.
But of course, you would learn from the documentation that you had released. Well, it took some work and time. That there had been conversations among them to really inform behind your back your superiors, was that the term that was used?
Those who were over you in the Lord.
They were going to your boss.
I only owed them canonical obedience in things lawful and honest.
Okay.
But was it honest to tell me they hadn't found?
Now your question did seem to as my family and I were being bullied, gaslighted, treated like dirt. Your question led, I was called up to a meeting. I'd applied for the Methodist Church.
Yeah, that's
and I was called up to a meeting, and I noticed the clerk of the Armagh Presbytery wasn't there.
Well, I know why from subject access requests.
But we did know then, we found out that basically that he had claimed that you were picking on him because of asking that question.
No, it wasn't asking that question. It was more complicated than that.
It's more, but basically he took time out.
Yeah.
And had like a pastoral care team.
Yeah.
To give him pastoral care.
Well, I don't know about that.
Now, of course, their victims know nothing of the sort of they're not given pastoral care or asked how
well,
they
I did
are.
make that point to them. No, you see, what actually happened, I was puzzled about this reaction of the archdeacons and these Presbyterian ministers and why they were so. I had forgotten that Gribben had actually said to you, we have made life hard for you. We can make it harder still if you. I'd forgotten this. So I wasn't at that stage aware that Gribben was involved and telling them what to do. But I sent a number of emails to Church House to which I got no replies. And because I got no replies, I sent them again. And I asked, why was there no pastoral care for the family? I asked a number of different things. And because the two Presbyterian ministers came to my house, they said they had done everything according to the spirit and letter of the code. So I asked, could I have a copy of the code? I was willing to purchase one. Anyway, I didn't get any reply to these emails, but I did get a reply in the third person from Gribben to I don't know who, which said a number of emails have come to Church House regarding Barry Reed under different names, which all seem to be from one person, the rector of Caledon. Well, I only ever use my own name, but I'm quite sure that there would be people in Winterburn and Caledon who knew the injustice perpetrated against you, and they probably wrote in and complained as well. But anyway, it went on to say, this is being dealt with, and there is no longer any need for Bill Atkins to contact Church House. And I thought, oh, that's good, they're dealing with it. And then what? Guess what? As soon as I got that email, the phone goes. Come to Church House. The archdeacons want to see me again. Now in that meeting, they were just talking rubbish again. They said I'm not entitled to see the code because I'm not a Presbyterian.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, one of them said to me, if you were a historian or something like that and you were doing a paper on the Presbyterian Church, you'd be allowed to see it, but you're not entitled to see it as Anyway, that's one thing they said. Another thing they did was to threaten me with a lawsuit. I mean, they were reading off their phones. They had clearly, my emails had been sent to them, which is illegal. The Commissioner for Information told me that was illegal because I phoned him up and asked him. But they were reading off their phones and they were making out that I'm some kind of nutcase, bombarding them with emails, which I never got any answers. And they threatened me with a lawsuit and said that I must detract and desist. And they said they would phone up and clear the matters and get me to drop the lawsuit. But anyway, I'm afraid I did agree that I would drop the matter. They wanted me to email the clerk of Presbytery and apologise for all the appalling things I'd said and done, which I did. And he sent me a very nice email back saying, that's all right, we'll forget about it. I know from subject access requests, he also informed Gribben that he had forgiven me. I mean, in these subject access requests, he looks quite rosy and clean. But I was just kind of in utter despair. I thought there is no recourse to justice, either within the Presbyterian system or outside. But then I found the code. It's online. It's a public document. Anyone can read it. I read it and I was horrified. There's no way they followed the spirit and letter of the code. They didn't even follow the letter of the code. I mean, that kind of information gathering thing, when anybody can come and speak in confidence, that is allowed in the code, but the purpose of it is to uncover evidence while avoiding pharmaclomosa. It's not supposed to be used when you've already had the inquiry and found no evidence and caused pharmaclomosa, and then to try and get something. Even today, they can't say what they found in that meeting. They say the minutes have been destroyed. Well, the code says they should be kept for 10 years. So, I mean, they just pick bits of the code to suit themselves, to cover their tracks.
Yes.
I mean, they have decided that you're guilty. They think they don't need any proof. I've actually had somebody say to me, where's your evidence that Barry is innocent? And they say they don't have to prove evidence that he's guilty. Well, they can't, for one thing. But they've decided. And it's a law of the Medes and Persians. We have decided he's guilty, and that's that. And we don't want any more discussion on it. End of. I mean, the fact that they're prepared to involve, the hierarchy of another church to cover their tracks, that just shows how despicable they are, if you ask me. They certainly had no concern for your welfare or your family. The code says that disciplinary proceedings should be carried out with tenderness and compassion, with a view to restoring the minister, and there will be a service of thanksgiving when he's brought to repentance and restored. Well, there's no question of that ever. They basically, I mean, you might remember I referred to you as an unperson. I mean,
very Orwellian.
Yeah, but the reason about that, when you were applying for the Methodist Church, I had actually produced a petition, which you're perfectly entitled to do, to petition the courts of the church. I asked people from Interburn and Caledon if they would sign it, because members of a lower court can petition a higher court, but of course, at the local level, the convener of the vacancy squashed it. But somebody did produce it to Peter Gamble, and that's when he started whining to the moderator.
Oh, I see, Bill.
And at
right.
that time, you see, again, I've got subject access requests.
Okay.
McLenaghan says to the clerk of Presbytery, "Oh, poor you. This is quite unwarranted. That there should be a vendetta against you. I will inform the Anglican authorities." Now, I didn't know at that stage that the moderator had informed the Anglican authorities, which it turns out was the Archbishop. I went to see the Archbishop because I made a complaint about the archdeacons. And he started going on about me breaking my ordination vows. I thought, what on earth is he talking about? I hadn't broken any ordination vows. But the point he was making is that I had vowed to the made a solemn vow, was the phrase Michael McLennan had used, to the archdeacons, that I wouldn't speak about this anymore, because they seem to think that good ecumenical relations takes precedence over natural justice. It's like Paul of Ennals, you know.
Yeah.
The reputation of the post office is more important than the welfare of your workers.
Of the plebs.
Or the Chinook, it's just been on the news lately, the Chinook pilots.
Yes.
You know, they were...
Yeah.
Air Vice Marshal said they were guilty of gross negligence. No evidence. In fact, the report denied that, but they were the top boys.
Well, regarding your petition, you wrote, although in your subject access request data, it was sort of snuffed at as a meaningless little trifle of a thing. Bill, and it's important that the audience would hear this. I went to one of the interrogations.
Yeah, and they tried to blame you.
It was held in First Portadown. For the first 20 minutes, they had a copy of that and went round and round in circles trying to say that I was behind it and wrote it.
Yeah.
And they were trying to put my fingerprints all over it. And I was like...
You didn't even know what the document was.
So now what's funny about that is that they do, whenever you work in a bubble of not needing evidence, you hide behind your authority and feel that you're sort of spiritually led to have feelings about things, and that makes them true. You don't really need evidence. Like you ended up getting the blame, like, for all sorts of things.
Well, I wasn't blamed for that. I wrote that petition.
Yeah, no, and that was fine, and you never denied it.
But I have not been anonymous in anything at any time.
We have totally never worked with their with their mode of people with no names and no faces. That's what we've always been up against. There are people with no names and no faces, and they, funnily enough, are protected to the nth degree. People like me,
we don't even know who they are.
We don't know who they are, but they're protected, and then others get thrown below the bus.
Well, I had no idea that McLenaghan was involved in the case against you until I saw that subject access request. I had no idea that he had undertaken to inform the Anglican authorities.
That was the terminology, that's right.
But also, he was talking about me having broken a solemn vow. What I'm dismayed at is that somebody as intelligent as the Archbishop and the archdeacons should be so easily taken in. How
would you describe those that describe themselves as gracious in all they do? Like, if you were to consider, you've been in ministry a long time, and how you deal with people and how you approach matters, how Christ-like are their actions toward you? your family, to me, and to others?
I think their chief concern has been to protect their reputation and the reputation of the PCI, but they have this shiny reputation, and I mean, people keep saying to me, I talk about them, they wouldn't do that, or they can't do that, and I have to go, well, they did do that, and I'm going to point out as well, it's got absolutely nothing to do with churchmanship, or you see, they claim to uphold the authority of Scripture and traditional doctrines of anthropology and sexuality and so on. And they seem to think this justifies them bullying people, but it's not to do with people's beliefs. I mean, it's rather strange that you were denied an appeal twice. You know, what's the point of an appeal system? What's the point of the courts of the church? They're just instruments to bully people. But apart from that, when you applied to the Methodist Church, you might remember that I wrote a reference for you, and the Methodist headquarters in England had said that you have to get credentials from Armagh Presbytery, and you didn't want to go to that meeting in Portadown. I remember the thought of it made you ill, but you had to.
Well, actually, an ambulance had to come for me. I collapsed on the main street in Larnes with my wife, going to get my eyes tested.
Yeah.
And it was the day before it. And I collapsed in the street, and an ambulance had to come for me. So that's.
But anyway, if you remember, the clerk at that time wanted to know why you wanted a meeting, and we thought we'd settled all these issues. Now, I've heard since that they think that this meeting you had in Portadown was the pastoral care that you were supposed to be given, and that you weren't cooperating. But anyway, I was in contact with the minister who wanted you to come and join him and his ministry team. And his comment was, PCI have shown absolutely no grace whatsoever.
Okay.
And now PCI is continuing to try and cover their tracks by saying that you're guilty of womanizing or something, and that they're glad they did due diligence to stop you going to the Methodist Church.
I'm not sure, Bill, interestingly, that they say that anymore. I think that's got a bit tired.
Well, they only say these things to cover tracks.
Yes, I'm not sure what it's about anymore. They sort of moved on. It was coarse language.
They kept changing their mind about what you were guilty
Yeah,
of.
they kept, and I could only really be guilty, I would presume, at the end of a process.
Well, they've never,
or a
they've
charge,
never actually charged you with
or
anything,
witnesses, or evidence, none of which has ever occurred. So, and whenever you're threatened with secret evidence, and then after 9 attempts at getting some of this evidence, you're told it doesn't exist.
I should tell
It
you
does
actually,
leave you feeling a bit like how much of a kangaroo system can you really can anyone ever be subjected to?
It's a total kangaroo system because it's designed to protect those who are in power.
That's the way it's used, perhaps. Sadly, it was not designed like that in the first place, because, of course, I was a member of the presbytery that I would be given protection and care. And somehow or another, it's now like the Politburo. It's now like the special KGB police.
Well, the ironical thing is, if you had been guilty of something, they could demonstrate that they were caring and had restored you. But because the whole thing was malicious from the start, their only response to any questioning is, we'll continue the cover-up. You don't know, we know.
I think they believe something at the start through the anonymous phone call.
Yeah,
but then were too proud to go back.
Yeah.
They couldn't stop. They had to keep pursuing this to look smart. And they're so narcissistic, they're so in love with themselves that they couldn't go back. They can't go back on anything because it might look publicly as though they've made a mistake. Now, the beauty of Reformed theology is it should be always about people in a church realising that they make mistakes and being able to reform and go back. But now we're in a system where the decisions made in Belfast we're told, are not to be questioned. You will be disciplined for questioning them. You can't question them in public. That's what these new laws that Mr. Gribben, the clerk, and I'm not sure where you find the biblical office of clerk is, or where I would find that, but Secretary General, the same term as Stalin gave to himself. He's meant to be an office worker doing the office work for the General Assembly, but now you mentioned the code and the nonsense you were told about it. Well, basically most Presbyterians now are led to believe that it's like a mysterious Gnostic document that only the clerk of the General Assembly can understand. You must phone him and he will interpret it for you. The and thummim will come out and he will tell you what it means. But of course it's utter nonsense, and it's all about power going to the centre. So obscure plebs, and the code's not for them, Bill. It's not for you.
Another thing, though, that as ordinary ministers, we tend to have a tender conscience because we do believe that we're sinful, and therefore we tend to comply with our superiors when they criticise us. But as you say, because they're narcissistic, if any criticism they get, they respond in fury, and any praise they get, they become overconfident in their own abilities. But
but you wouldn't describe their actions as gracious and Christ-like.
Oh no, not. I mean, they could have spoken to you right at the beginning and said, "Is there any truth in this allegation?" Instead, they created this whole. They created pharmaclomosa.
Of course.
I mean, the code says that you shouldn't go to the press while a 161 is underway. Sorry for 161 is the disciplinary.
No, that's right. That's but Bill, going over it is not easy for either of us, and
it's disappointing.
I want to thank you publicly for being part of our podcast series, and I want to thank you for having a Christian heart that has a concern about justice, about righteousness, about doing what's right, and that's so important. So
one thing I forgot to mention, when they threatened me with a lawsuit, I said, "What for?" And they said, "You've cast aspersions on the professionalism of officers of the PCI." To which I said, yes, privately in an email. But I took legal advice because I was actually quite perturbed about this threat of a lawsuit. A threat of a lawsuit.
As anyone would be.
A very gracious threat of a lawsuit,
yes,
of course.
Yeah.
But anyway, the legal advice I got was they wouldn't do that because they don't want the public to know what they did, because they know that they didn't have a leg to stand on. And the only way they can justify what they did is by convincing themselves that you're guilty of something. They can't say what because they've got no evidence.
Yes. But no, I appreciate the courage that it has taken and to be part of.
I don't know about courage.
Well, it takes courage. These people are bullies. They intimidate. They frighten. That's the whole. There's a lot more than you got. The whole. Our lawyers, the pensioners in the church will be funding our legal team, and we can laugh as our lawyers take you to the cleaners bill. The list of people that's been on the receiving end of that is very, very long in PCI. The amount of money the Presbyterian Church in Ireland is spending on these legal fees and lawyers is astronomical.
Is it?
It's astronomical. And it's meant to be a threat bill, so don't in any way feel that there's something wrong with you. You felt intimidated and frightened and bullied. Well, that was the idea of it. And most people do cave in. And after a little bit of reflection, you didn't. So appreciate your courage. And let's a big thank you, and I know that the audience that's joining us will be thankful as well, taking part. So
well, it depends who's watching. They might be saying, why is he interfering in Presbyterian matters or something like that?
You're here to tell your story, Bill, and you're not interfering. And for someone to ask a simple question about the manner in which their friend was treated, I do want to remind our audience that I was in the Presbyterian church and you were in the Church of Ireland beside me, and we worked well together.
That's right. We had Bible studies together.
With Bible studies, we did things. We used to have a great laugh at the BB enrollment services and prize giving nights and all the rest of it. And there's no crime in sending a question of concern about your friend when he's stitched up. So don't ever feel bad about that, Bill, and don't allow them to bully you into thinking there's something wrong with that. You live in a free society, thankfully.
Well, I was told actually, I was advised by the archdeacons to go to the counselling service. So
Bill,
they claimed they were worried about my mental health. Anyway, I went. The counsellor said, well, it's no wonder you're under stress the way the archdeacons are treating you.
Well, of course, Bill, you and I also went to a little retreat the Church of England runs in England, and I was pretty battered and spoke to a psychologist there.
Yeah.
And you remember what it was she said, that it was akin that had been treated?
Well, she did say that it was similar to having been raped.
Yeah.
The acronym she used was SCARF, the 5 emotional needs we all have, which they undermined and destroyed. She did liken it to being raped.
And she said that I was similar to a rape victim of abuse.
This is a daughter of the vicarage. She set up this place as a retreat for clergy, but she's also a trained psychotherapist.
That's right.
And so they offer psychotherapy to clergy who are under stress.
That's right.
Yeah, they were at that time actually in connection with Aston University doing a project about the clergy discipline measures in the Church of England, which are a blunt instrument to batter clergy, whether they're guilty or not, so they can be seen to be doing something when there are complaints against clergy. But
Bill, on that
so I don't think it's just the Presbyterian Church.
On that sad note, and being unable to find this graciousness that they talk of themselves, of how gracious and Christ-like they are, we don't actually can't find that or see it, but maybe in their own imagination, that's what they look like. I don't know. But thanks for coming, and I look forward to our next podcast, and we'll have another guest with us. So thank you, Bill.
Oh, well, thank you.